I want to say hi. Welcome to Jason Foulke to this podcast that we're introducing from ScriptE. So, Jason, you're a veteran script supervisor, veteran ScriptE user. Can you just tell us about who you are, about yourself? What?
Sure.
Yeah.
I am from New York, born and raised, and work here still. I've been in the industry for a very long time now. My first script supervising job was 2005, so been at this for almost 20 years, which is a long time. And I'd like to apologize for my eyes. My allergies are going a little crazy today.
That's fine. I can't tell. Okay, so you've been doing this about 20 years. So, how did you get started? What was your training? Did you have any training? Tell us more about that.
No, I actually had a pretty interesting introduction to supervising. I was a PA on an independent movie that was in prep in pre-production, and I was helping them out with that, and I was they had maybe five of us that were helping them out, five PAs, and I was like the only one they seemed to trust. Me and another guy were the guy they trusted, and they at the time they had a little office space, and we shared a desk at this little office. They called, and so one day the editor of the movie, who was also the writer of the movie as well. So that's why he was on during pre-production. Called down to the desk and was going to ask whoever answered the phone, "Hey, do you want to be the script supervisor?" And I happened to have just gotten there early in the day, and so he called down the desk. He said, "Hey, do you want to be a script supervisor?" And my response was, "Sure. What is that?"
Yeah, I
And
kind of recognize that.
so he gave me a rough idea of it. I can't remember his explanation to this day, but basically that it was better than a PA, and I'd argue it is. And he said, "Okay, we have some script notes from some previous movies we've made. If you want to come up to my office, I have those here." So I went up to his office. He had a couple of binders from other movies, just full script writer note binders. And then he said, "I want you to take the rest of the day off and go to the Lincoln Center Library, which is the only library in New York that carries this kind of thing." They had the one book about script supervision, the one we all have read at this point.
The Millers, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so he was like, go to the library right now, take out that book, read it, take these notes, and sort of figure out how to do this job.
Wow.
And they did. Yeah.
Yeah, that was right into the deep end of the pool on day one, right?
Yeah. It
Yeah.
was, that was rough.
Yeah. But then you kept going. Then you kept going. So, what are some of your favorite gigs that you had?
You know what? I've been very lucky. I'll say that. I've had a lot of really good gigs. I've had a couple bad ones, but even the bad ones, there's been positives. You have to really like this job and like this field and what we're doing
For
to do
sure.
it. I'll say I love my current job, of course. I've been working on The Equalizer for 5 seasons now,
Hmm.
on CBS with Queen Latifah. Um,
That's
it's
cool. Yeah.
and the whole cast are great and the crew are great. So I don't like going to work is not as bad some days as it would be at any job. Monday mornings or Monday mornings anywhere. And
Yes,
you know,
I just have to say that I do think that Monday mornings are generally less Monday when you're on a good job,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, you don't want to. I completely blanked where I was going there.
Yeah,
Um,
you wouldn't do this job if you didn't like it, right?
yeah,
And
there are some days that are going to be rough. You know, you're going to go outside and it's going to be -2 degrees or whatever, and it's going to be terrible. But you have to find a way to you have to want to be there. But back to the question, another job I really loved was it was this movie called Your Next. It was a horror movie. Now it's actually pretty well known. The director and writer are kind of big as well, but they weren't really known at the time. So it was this very sort of unknown group of people. They cast other filmmakers in a lot of the roles, other independent directors and stuff like that. One was Ty West, who's actually very famous in the horror world now.
Hmm.
But the whole movie is set in one night in one house. So for script supervision, it's crazy. And it's a horror movie. So
Yeah.
there's blood and gore and a lot of it was tracking. I would have to figure out where people are in the house in different times. And then
Yeah.
also a fun thing was like which guy has which weapon because they sort of would put down one thing and pick up another. And so it was because they were improvised kills a little bit.
Oh, so
And so it
so were you
all
shooting that out of order as well, or
yes,
how?
yeah. The
Wow.
whole obviously everything was out of order. And that was part of the nightmare was like the leading lady would the leading cast would keep getting more blood on themselves throughout the movie as things happen. So it would be a constant work of like, do we want more? Where do we want the blood? And when you watch the movie, you can watch the main actress. It's almost perfect from scene to scene, and I don't take credit for that at all. That was just a wonderful makeup effects team who did that. I helped a little bit in
Yeah, of
keeping the
course you did.
continuity,
Of
obviously.
course you did. You did probably, I would
I did step
assume
in
that
from
you
time to
did.
time and say, yeah,
Yeah, and I would assume that they wouldn't have been able to do that without your timeline of the night
exactly.
and all of that. So, of course, it's teamwork, right? Continuity is
And
teamwork.
yeah, and also since it was an indie movie, there were things that had to change. They had on the fly. So there were like things that we would have to rewrite, and I would actually sit there with the writer, and we would just talk about, okay, well, how can we rewrite this? How can we change this? What works with what we've shot already and what
Mm,
we have established, what will work? How can we get around what we had planned here and change it to something maybe like it was mostly simplifying things that were maybe a little too ambitious. There was one guy who got killed in a certain way, and it was going to be too hard to do uh, practically with our. It was just not going to look good. It was very conceptually great, but we didn't have the money or
mm,
resources to pull it off. So we had to
mm.
simplify it, which was going to make the movie a better movie, and it did. But we had to discuss, well, what have we already said about this? What have we shown already? What have we talked about? So like, things like that. And then, like I said, with the weapons, does that change it? Does this guy now have this thing? Does he not? How
Mm.
could he have this or not?
Yeah, that sounds like a fun job to me, for sure. Would have I love that kind of job where you really need to be on top of what we already established. You
Yeah.
want to make these changes. What consequences are those changes going to have? I love that. I love that.
It was it was also shot it was like 30 days in Missouri, which I'd never been to, and like basically all nights. So it was just in one location. So it was like this little. The crew was so tight knit on that. It was just this little. It felt like a little family making a movie. It felt like friends making a movie more than a job a lot of the time.
Hmm.
It was fun. And ended up, and the ultimate thing is the movie is a very good movie too. When you look at the continuity in it, it's very good.
That's
And
great.
I'm proud of it.
That's great. That's great. I love to hear that. We all want to be proud of what we do, right? And I think every script supervisor that at least I know, we take a lot of pride in the work that we do. There's this, yeah, definitely proud of what we do and we take it seriously. So that's great to hear. So let's change the topic a bit and move into ScriptE a bit. How long have you been using the ScriptE application?
I have actually been using it since it came out, which I believe is 2008, maybe?
Yeah, it's been a
Maybe?
long time. It's been a
It
long
was a long,
time. Can't
it's been a long
remember.
time. There was a program around when I started script supervising, pre-scripty. Barely anyone used it, and it was sort of a disaster. They stopped developing it actively, and then you couldn't get in touch with the person. They wouldn't, you could still buy it, but they wouldn't send you an activation key. So then you couldn't use it.
Hmm.
It was weird. It was just like a sort of forgotten project. And I remember there have been discussions of people saying, hey, this is something we need. We need some kind of dedicated software for our job. This one isn't it, and it's the only thing out there. And then I remember Tony started asking questions saying, well, what would you want to see in that? If we did that, what would you want to see? How would you want to see that done? And then I remember it coming out and being very excited about there being a functional program to do this job.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was on the Mac. You are still on the Mac, right?
Still on the Mac. I also use the iPad. I
Okay.
go back and forth,
Mm-hmm.
both because I like to be able to fill in for anyone and use whatever they're using,
Mm-hmm.
because the workflow just flows easier that way.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I'll switch between the Mac and the iPad sometimes when it's a tighter shooting situation or like tight close quarters or the weather is really bad and
Mm.
I don't want to take a computer anywhere near and outside.
Now the beaches are not fun, I've noticed.
No.
I've killed two computers by working on a
Oof.
beach. So okay, but tell us about your setup. So you have both the Mac and the iPad, but what else do you use? Do you use stands, keyboards? What do you
Yeah,
use?
yeah. So I have a everyone loves my setup. I'll email you a photo of it. I spent some time working on my setup over the years just because I'm a little bit of a gear nerd, but also yeah, it's made the job a lot easier too. I've made myself very self-contained. I have a Matthew, it's called the Matthews Monitor Stand 2. That's what I
Mm-hmm.
use as my primary stand. It's pretty big. It's big, a big boy, but it's got wheels on it. Um, and then on top of that, I use a cheese plate. I use a Calypso. I believe it's a Calypso plate. If you're looking for, I can send you links to all these things. Calypso. It's essentially though, it's a cheese plate with standard size holes drilled into it. That then I have a whole bunch of other accessories attached to it, including the laptop. So I have the laptop on top of the plate. And then underneath it, I have all these things mounted. There's a lot of really great people who make accessories, like 3D printed things that you can
Mm.
find specifically for this and for like devices we use. So for example, I have the Blackmagic mini recorder box
Yeah.
and I have a custom little holder for it that's mounted underneath my stand. And then I also have the way I get my video is I have a Hollyland Cosmo system
Mm-hmm.
and I keep that hooked up to my DIT at all times, the DIT on set. We're lucky to have one. But if I didn't, I would hook it up to the just general video village.
Okay.
And they send me a feed of all the cameras through that. And so that just stays set up all the time on their
Mm-hmm.
part. And then I have the receiver on my end that then hooks into the Blackmagic system and ultimately into the computer. And then I power that all with camera batteries, those big Dionic heavy
Yeah.
things. That's a little bit of overkill, but it's the reason I do that versus like a power bank or something like that is A, it makes you fit in a little bit, oddly enough.
Mm-hmm.
But B, there have been times where I've genuinely forgotten to charge it or something, or I've needed to charge one in the middle of the day. I just
Yeah.
can steal can just borrow one from the camera department or use one of their chargers.
Mm.
So it just makes a little more sense because it's just more practical for the set. I wouldn't
Yeah.
recommend it in real life ever. They're
Yeah.
expensive and big.
Yeah. But for set life, they're good. For set life,
But
they're
for set
good.
lights, they're good. And my entire kit fits inside a one small rolling Pelican case.
Mm-hmm.
Everything except for the stand. The stand is separate, but everything fits inside one little rolling Pelican case. I can easily just pack that up and go wherever I need to go.
That's
It's
nice.
also
That's
it's
nice.
also very quick because you keep most of the stuff attached to the plate. So you're really just slipping it in and out of a box, and you're ready to go.
Nice. Nice. So when you use your iPad, what do you have a keyboard for that, or are you just tapping along on the
No, the
iPad?
the
So,
iPad I have a pretty basic case for nothing crazy. I'll use the pencil
hmm
because a lot of times when I do use the iPad, it's bad whether I want to have gloves on, for example. So I'll use a pencil. But yeah, I don't use anything special with the iPad.
Yeah.
It's pretty naked a lot of the time.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to see the photo of your setup. I think I've seen it in the digital script supervisor group before,
Yeah.
but like getting one that's not going to end up getting lost in the feed, so to speak. That's going to be, I'm going to, and knowing where to find it, I'm going to have a look. Looking forward to it. When you like, what specific problems or challenges were you facing before you used ScriptE, and how has the ScriptE software helped you overcome these challenges? It's been a long time now that you've
Yeah.
been using ScriptE. Maybe you don't remember, but yeah.
No, like I was saying before, I was actually looking for Thrifty in some way to come out because I've always been more of a, I'm old now, but I was once young and I was one of the first sort of digital people in the world, really into like compute. I grew up with computers. So I was less comfortable writing things with like my handwriting. I always had terrible handwriting.
No,
I was always
same.
I got criticized for it in school all the time. I wonder if kids still if that still happens to kids. But
Yeah, I think
I
so.
remember that being a big thing that your handwriting wasn't good,
Mm,
and I don't think it's really any worse than anyone else's in the world now that I'm an adult. But it wasn't my thing. I hated the pencil and the giant binder, and I was like there's an easier way to do this that can skip a lot of this stuff, consolidate it up. Because a lot of the handwritten stuff, you're just repeating work again, like
mm,
writing the setup over and over on 4 different pages. And
mm.
that's what the main problem script solves. You don't have to do that anymore. You put it in one place and it goes to all 4 places.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I agree. Okay, so yeah, cool. So we're jumping a bit back and forth here, maybe, but because we're talking about ScriptE, do you have any onset stories? Remember, honoring all NDAs, leaving
Mhm.
names out when necessary. What's one of your favorite onset stories that is sort of related to the topic?
That's a tough one. I have so many onset stories that are just crazy.
Tell
And
us
also,
all.
yeah, but most of them are top secret, never to be discussed.
Okay, we know
I
that
will.
can be.
This is just a funny story of an actor on one thing I was doing. They said the cliche, my character wouldn't say this line,
Mhm.
and the showrunner was there and said, "Well, I write your character, so I know what they would say," which is I just always think that was such a hilarious moment.
Yeah. And that's so true though, right?
So true. Like,
Okay.
well, I created you.
Yeah, I know it. I know that character. Yeah. Trust me. Okay, but moving on. Okay. The stories are secret. We can live with that. We've all
Mhm.
signed NDAs at some point, or will, if there are new listeners that are yet to sign an NDA, you will at some point. But we recently released ScriptE version 3. Yes, so that introduced some changes, as many will have noticed. What are your favorite features of version 3? And like, what do you
You know what?
find most valuable? Not necessarily with version 3, but yeah, favorites.
Well, I'll just say overall, I've always loved the multi-unit once that came along, but especially version 3. Took a second to get used to, just going
Hmm.
from the old version and the old way we used to work. Once I got got used to it. Now I love the way it works now. You just press a button and everyone's updated pretty instantly. And it's great. It's really, you can share your whole everything with somebody. So someone can just come on real quick and have all your notes, all the information you have about a project right there in front of them. And
Hmm.
that's really powerful because then even if you're just sick, even if you just get sick for a day,
Hmm.
that whoever steps in for you can really have knowledge, and you can be a little more sure about what they're able to do, how
Yeah.
good they are at their job, but what the tools they have to them for the
Hmm.
job.
I agree. I love the file sharing. It's like to the point where I've had someone work with me on the same day and I uploaded, they uploaded, and we just instantly knew what
Yeah.
the other one
Yeah.
was doing right then and there. Um, of
Yeah. If
course,
you were in a
we,
stable enough studio environment and
yeah,
stuck on some Wi-Fi, you could do that all
yeah,
day.
yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, I love that. Anything else that you find valuable with it?
You know what? One of the most valuable, this seems like such a small thing, but to me it's huge, is that
Hmm.
you can compare old versions of the script, the previous
Mm,
revision to the new one.
yes.
Just I've always done that using Final Draft.
Mm,
There's a way to do it in Final Draft, but it's kind of annoying to do. It's a long way around, honestly. It's not well designed, and it's great just having it right there in front of me and
mm,
being able to show that to people like on set. They like, well, yeah, it did. So in the previous revision, it was even writers on set
mm,
really appreciate that. They're like, oh, so what did the last one? That's okay. So we changed that. All right.
mm. Yeah, cool. Yeah, I've never used that one. That I haven't used that one much, but I think I will once I start working again, I think. Yeah, that's nice.
It's great if there are like also if they're smaller revisions, they're not like big
Exactly.
sweeping things where you want to actually compare, hey, did, how much did, I know this changed, but my brain is fried right now.
Yeah.
I can't quite put down how exactly. So let me see here.
Yeah, I mean, I've been lucky as well because mostly been on shows that haven't done a lot of mid-show revisions.
Hmm.
So even though I've actually been using version 3 since way before it became public, I've been on the Mac version since very early of 2022.
Oh wow.
And I think that's like the project I was on with the most revisions. And I remember using it on that one, but after that, I've been lucky to not have to deal with too many revisions on my own. So yeah, but that's a really good tool. I agree.
Yeah, that actually reminds me of a another feature that I love is
Yeah.
the original ScriptE also had this, but you can the ability to on set just actually edit the script.
Mm,
I work in TV a lot, and we have a lot of on set changes
mm,
frequently, where they it could be a lot of the times you leave the script the same and you just put change it in the notes, but sometimes they're pretty complicated and they're not going to come out in a revision
mm.
before you before you shoot them, and it allows you just to maybe clean it up a little bit for
Yeah.
the post department. Like for example, if this just happened to me last night, actually, they decided to swap two characters' lines. They were giving character A character's B line and character
Mm,
B's character the other line. So I was able to just quickly open up ScriptE and change the character name that was saying the line, and
yeah.
took 2 seconds. And that's going to be way cleaner than having to like cross it out and say, no, this is the other guy and this is guy
Yeah, it's an
B.
arrow and
Gets
yeah.
the arrow and everything, but now they just have it properly.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. So how do you do that? Do you use that often? Like how do you deal with because we can do this and I'm giving a bit context here. We can do this from the script breakdown view. We can edit the script, but there is a risk that that will mess up camera lines. How do you typically work with that when you work with that on set? Do you erase camera lines? What do you do? Do them after? Like how do you deal with that?
Well, in those cases, I wouldn't have lined those scenes yet. Usually, if it's like a phone call and they're rewriting the other side of a phone call, I'll usually read There's two ways to do it. One is sometimes I will go and I'll redraw the lines from the previous setup after I make the changes
Mhm.
to the script. But a lot of the times I find they don't change who is speaking in what order. So you can just, or not really, or not adding any amounts, not adding anything. So there's no change except for what the words are there.
Hmm. Hmm.
There's not like an extra block of dialogue, for example. It's the same blocks, just different words. And that doesn't change the script lines, thankfully, when they do that. So
We have very, very different experiences with this because most of the time, but I think that is also because maybe writers are more involved in the US compared to what they are where I've been working, where things might actually like we might throw it out entirely on set and create something completely new. So that's why I was asking.
Yeah,
Is that,
no,
but very
we
interesting to hear. I love to hear that kind of experiences that other people have when working in different countries, and of course, with in different countries mean different traditions and all of that. So that's very interesting to hear that. But yeah, I can imagine that's the case. Actually, I've been working on a few since moving to the UK, I've been working on a few American shows that shoot here, and I
hmm
think that you're probably right, actually. They might not change how many lines, but they might
yeah,
change the
so
content of
sometimes
it.
it works out perfectly, and
Yeah,
that's those are great times when it does.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
sometimes you just can't. They're set up, they're ready to go. They just need
mm,
to tweak a couple of words, and
yeah,
that's it. And
yeah.
then it's a simple change.
We're talking a bit about this maybe, but do you have any tips or best practices for getting the most out of Scripty? What do you do?
I find a big part of it is muscle memory. Just that's what we do in general, or any system really, muscle memory. So just doing it. Just I would just practice a lot. Actually using the program is the way to learn how to use the program.
Mm.
Just keep using it. Experience will make you better and faster. And that's it.
Yeah, 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 I agree. Sometimes I've been screen grabbing so much on the Mac. I sit and do it even though I don't have anything
Same,
connected to it. I just do it. And people are
same,
like, what are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm
same.
actually
Yeah,
not doing anything."
I'll notice. Yeah, I will have nothing hooked up, and I'll just tap my finger like that, and
Yeah.
people, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's just natural.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
almost like I'm making the take happen. Like I'm making the
Yeah.
camera roll.
And then when you find the cut points, you make sure you do it and
Yeah.
confuses people a lot. Yeah. Okay, we're gonna start like finishing off a bit, but what like for new users, new script supervisors, not necessarily new users, but new script supervisors, what advice can you offer? What do you wish that someone had told you when you got started?
I think a lot of it is because I didn't really have that much of a formal education in how to do this. One of the things I would say though that has come in handy most on set is learn general filmmaking. Don't learn how to be a script supervisor. Learn how to be everything a little bit. You want to know a little bit about how the lighting works. You want to know a little bit about the camera and how it actually works. These little weird technical things will sometimes come in incredible use. Know how just literally knowing how people's department works can sometimes be helpful and help you head off a problem. So can't think of the specific examples right now, but knowing what other people are have to do will generally make you better and
Yeah.
more agreeable and easy to work with. For example, actors and knowing what every actor wants and needs and how they work and
Mm.
being able to coax that out of them is one of our big duties. You know, we have to get the dialogue, but you can't just run in there and be pounding them to get the dialogue. That's not going to do anything. So you got to figure out how to work with them, how you're going to actually do that.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Very true. Um, it's funny that you should say that because that makes me think of a very special actor who was on one of the first jobs that I did, like one of the first professional jobs that I did. And he asked me, yelled out, and I hadn't noticed. The thing was, I hadn't noticed because he was quite far down in the frame. And he was like, "Did I cross my left leg over the right one or the other way around?" And I was like, "Oh, I have no idea." So I just said something. I mean, it was a 50-50 chance, and of
hmm
course it was wrong. But after that time, I knew that that specific actor would ask that type of question. So
Exactly. Yeah.
anytime I work with him, I will know.
Yeah, you know to pay more attention to continuity with this person little more
Yeah,
con to dialogue with this person.
exactly.
And yeah,
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Back on that theme, like your bookshelf, do you have any script supervision or filmmaking books, videos? Not necessarily books, like videos, other resources that you recommend to aspiring script supervisors or filmmakers?
that's a tough one. I've been in this for a little bit, so I don't have a ton of things for newcomers. All the classic books, all the books that are out there, you should read about script
Hmm.
supervising. There's not that many, and they're all good. And obviously, some of them are older, but you can update that yourself in your knowledge because a lot of it is still the same. Screen direction is still screen direction.
Yeah.
And I recommend reading a lot of editing books. Knowing how to edit and what you can get away with and what you cannot, very
Mm,
important.
very important. Agreed. All right. So that concludes the questions that I had. Is there anything that you want to talk about that you're like, oh, I really wanted to bring this up?
No, not really. No, yeah.
No. Okay. Okay, that you don't have to. You don't have to have thought of anything special. That's just like one of those things that I'd like
Yeah.
to ask. Have I forgotten something? But thank you so much for taking the time and being our first featured ScriptE user.
I am
Um,
very honored. Thank you very much.
yeah, yeah, we really appreciate you. Tony was very happy that you were going to be the first one. He was like, that's the guy I want for the first one. We have a list of others that we're going to be featuring, but he really, really wanted you to be the first one. So thank you so much for taking the time. I know that you've been working Friday. Okay,
Yeah, thank you. Have a
thank
great
you.
day.
You too. Bye.
Bye.